Hey guys, it's me Tori with thenakedgardeners.com, and in this video I wanted to take you through my process of making a very simple tomato sauce. Now I have watched a ton of different videos when I was learning about it, and now that we have been growing an abundance of tomatoes, I had to figure out what worked for me, and I did find that there's a lot of preferences. Some people like to peel them. I'm one of them. I learned. My first batch, I didn't peel my tomatoes, and Sid really did not like the texture of finding that skin in there. So it is a very tedious process, but I do it, and I'm motivated to do it now because I actually make tomato paste out of the skins, so nothing goes to waste. So some of the things I learned in talking to others that have been making tomato sauce for years is the only thing we really all have in common is that we love tomato sauce. Some people swear by taking those skins off. Some people swear by leaving them on. Some people swear by making sure they remove the seeds. And for me, I had to do something that worked for me. During the summer, when I am harvesting a bunch of tomatoes, I don't always have enough to do a large batch. So what works for me is when I harvest the tomatoes, I bring them inside and I always core them and I score them. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a moment, now that I have them all in my bags here. I did go out a little bit earlier and I took what I needed out. What I realized works best for me is making about 16 pounds worth, and I've also learned that a freezer gallon bag will hold about 4 to 4.10 pounds of the Roma tomatoes, and that is what I'm making this very simple tomato sauce out of, is our Roma tomatoes that we grew during the summer. Now many in the discussions that I had like to make their tomato sauce fresh out of the garden, and that's great, more power to them, but at the same time I'm getting a lot of tomatoes. It's like the height of my pickle season when I'm making a bunch of pickles, and it's just too overwhelming. So again, you have to simplify things that work for you. If you want to do it much more complicated, go ahead and knock yourself out. Now I always start my process with getting my cored and scored tomatoes. I just go one bag at a time. I'm dipping it into a warm bowl of water, and I do that because the skins come off very, very easily. And as I mentioned before, I save the skins. I'll show you what my tomato seasoning looks like, and it is just for me dehydrating the skins and then grinding them down, and I can repurpose it by putting about 2 tablespoons of water for 1 tablespoon of that powder, and it is a phenomenal tomato paste. And again, it's something that most people just throw out in the trash. So this is frozen, but before I put it into this bag, I used this corer, and I always just take out that and then I split the bottom, because at this point when I finally do this, it makes it so much easier. I do prefer to do this in a bowl like this because I don't want my water running and being wasteful. You see, like as soon as I put it in there, this skin just peels off so easy. But it is tedious because, as you see, like I have a bunch to get through. As I finish skinning this, I'm just gonna put it right into the pan. It's gonna take me a while to fill that pan up, so I'm gonna get through some of this tedious stuff. I probably should have put these peels in a strainer to start with to help me get as much water away from them for when I dehydrate them. I just thought of that, so I'm gonna just let it start draining as much as possible. This represents very clearly why I only do about 16 pounds, and I've got it figured out now. The 4 gallon size freezer bags filled with these is the perfect amount for me when I do these batches. I want to reiterate that the reason I'm using the Roma tomatoes, for me it's just a really meaty tomato and it has very minimal seeds in it. And that's really the reason I prefer to use the Romas to make for my pasta sauces. However, I have heard marzipan tomatoes are great. I haven't grown them yet personally. Comment down below and let me know what tomatoes you like to use when you're making it for your sauces. I'd really like to know, and I might want to experiment with that as well. Overall, I've heard from a lot of my friends that they use a variety of different tomatoes. And I have tasted their sauces, I've tasted my sauce, and you know what? They're good. All of them are good. Our next step here is to put this over medium-high heat, and the objective is to get it boiled down and crush it and try to get it to a little bit of that state. When I get to that point, I will show you about where we are. It's just getting warm enough for me to start going through my first bit of crushing here. And I'm just going to keep checking on it. Once it seems like it's all crushed, then I will bring it to a light boil over medium heat for about, I want to say like 10 or 15 minutes. We still have a ways to go, but we are starting to get somewhere. I keep kind of like spooning up from the bottom and finding the chunks and kind of crushing them. Since that'll take a while, I'm getting this prepared. I want to say that I really like this electric ball water bath. And I use it, as you can see, like when I'm doing stuff on the stovetop, it kind of gets in the way. When I use my stovetop water bath canner, this has come in very handy, and it's very simple. It's kind of like almost a set it and forget it. So that's nice for me. And it is nice having two options now. But for this, one of the things I really like about this is when it's done, I can just open that to drain it, which is quite convenient. For this, I'm going to just turn it all the way up to preheating the jars, and then next, and then I just wait, and it's going to tell me the next step is going to be asking me to go ahead and process, but I'll be taking these out and filling them up with sauce. After a little while, when I start to feel that the potato masher isn't as effective, I do get my emulsifier out and try to get it as smooth as possible. At this point, I am waiting for it to get to a boil. And once I do see that it's boiling, I am going to set the timer for about 10 minutes. The next step, sometimes people will put this through a strainer if there's a lot of seeds, and you can do that. I'm not doing that. These seeds and the aromas are so minimal and it's not a big deal to me, but I will be putting it in a blender and blending it down even more. This batch, I want to get it a little thicker than the last one. I will show you what I mean. Let me go grab my other sauce. Okay, revisiting the sauce that I made last time. It tastes really, really good. Don't get me wrong on that, but I don't like how watery it is, and that's really my fault. I was impatient and I just needed to cook it down a little bit longer to get it thicker. I'm going to be transferring this into this large plastic container so that I can blend it in batches and be able to pour it right back into here. Alright, so I'm going to return this and let it cook on about medium-high heat. I'm going to keep checking on it, and I'm waiting for it to reduce, probably for the thickness that I want, about half of where it's at. As I'm waiting for the sauce to thicken, I just took the jars out. They're done being sanitized. One of the things I like about this recipe is that I can add the seasonings per jar. It's not something I'm going to add to the batch, and I'll tell you why I do that is I don't know how thick the sauce is going to be, and at the end of the day, that depends on how many of these I'm going to get to fill. So I do know the ratio that I need per quart. I don't know how much I'm going to end up with depending on how thick it is. So that is why I like to do my seasoning per jar. Whether this is a pint, like if it's a pint, it's going to be half of what I would do here. Now, you don't have to add any seasonings at all. This is where you can get creative. You can just have it be plain and decide to flavor it however your dish is going to end up when you decide to use the sauce. I know I'm going to have this as an Italian seasoning. I know the flavors that I like in my base. You do need to have some type of acidic base in order to water bath it. If you don't, you do need to pressure can it. Now, I don't have the citric acid. The citric acid for this size, I believe it's like a half a teaspoon. I'm going to be using lemon juice. It's 1 tablespoon for a pint, 2 tablespoons for a quart. So this is going to be my acid base. Because I don't know how thick the sauce is going to be, I'm just going to like season 3 jars at a time, and then I'll do more as I see how much I need. I just kind of calculate it by eye as I go. My preferences on the seasoning when I'm doing the quarts, just to stay on not an over seasoned side of things, about a half a teaspoon of a seasoning is safe in here. Now I will be adding some of the basil that I did dehydrate from my own garden this past season. I'll be using some of the onions that I dehydrated and ground from our garden this season. I want to have a little spice to it. I had some banana peppers that had a little kick that I'm going to dehydrate and add to this. All of those things, it's just going to be a teaspoon. Half a teaspoon is what's recommended for a pint, a whole teaspoon for a whole quart. I used all of the garlic that I had dehydrated. I liked it a lot. So obviously it's already gone, which has us growing a lot more garlic this season. But I will be adding some garlic. Now a teaspoon is about what it says. I like really garlicky things. I might add a little bit more. And I always like to add the Redmond real salt to my dishes, especially my sauces. It always gives it a little added flavor. Again, these are optional things. I'm also going to do a little thyme and a little parsley. You don't have to do any of these, but I'm just sharing with you what I'm going to add per quart. I think I have the sauce about down to where I want it, and what I'm looking at is having it kind of coat the spoon. I probably could go a little thicker, but it's been boiling like this for over an hour. I think that's pretty good. This is thicker than the last sauce. I'm going to be filling my jar and just giving it about 1 inch of the head space, and I'm really curious how many of these I'll fill. I might have enough for 3 more jars, so I need to put some seasonings in there. Sydney says I'm not good at math. However, he's not wrong. I am pretty good at gauging just visually about how much something is, even with measurements, calculating how much should go in. So I'm feeling proud of myself that I didn't put seasoning in an extra jar and waste it. I'm gonna go ahead and mix these up, get the air pockets out before I clean the edges of this lid, and get it inside of my water bath canner here. I'm not going to bore you with all of the finishing, processing, and stuff like that. I am going to go ahead and show you a picture of the finished product. It's quite easy. As I said, it's going to be in that water bath canner for 40 minutes once it gets to the temperature that it needs to be at. I've been very happy with that water bath canner. It is a second tool for me, and I have used both at the same time because oftentimes I need more than 7 quarts to go, and it's a lengthy process. So it's really nice to be able to do 14 quarts at a time now. But I will say that that water bath canner right now is my favorite. I'm not affiliated with anybody. I've just been using it and find it to be really simple. I hope that this gave you some inspiration to just go ahead and treat making a sauce like an art. Don't be so rigid and feel like you have to follow a whole bunch of rules. Kind of test it out. I know I learned about making it thicker. I learned that I don't like the skins on there. As a matter of fact, while the sauce was thickening, I went ahead and put the skins into the dehydrator because that tomato seasoning, I have to tell you, like, I've added it to soups, the powder. I don't always use it for paste. I've put a little bit into some dishes that I'm making, that I'm pressure cooking, and it just really infuses a lovely flavor. I hope some of this information was helpful, and until the next time, thanks for joining me.